there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. I have done one video on how to use up your dark card bases or black card bases, and there were many comments saying that it was really helpful, and so I am back with another one. So I'm going to show you lots of card ideas, and it does mean that we are going to move through this relatively quickly. It's not like my usual kind of style where I go through step by step. Some of this will be a little bit fast, so I apologize for that, but there are lots of cards in this video that I'm going to go through and get lots of great ideas on how we can use up these darker card bases. So I'm starting off here by creating a frame. You can do this out of any shaped dies that you have, or you might even just have a frame die that as is. I just use the stacking oval die set. This is the Hero Arts Infinity die set, but any is going to work. And then I have created a frame from two of those. I'm getting some perfect pearls out to kind of really almost change up the color of my black cardstock here. So this is some perfect pearls in the perfect pearl color. I added a little bit of water with this, and I'm just using a paintbrush to gently put this down the front. I'm going all in one direction. Then once I have dried this, and I used a heat gun to speed up the process, this is a very shimmery, gorgeous black card front. Now I did decide to trim this down to be just the front panel so that I could do a little bit more work with it. Then just to give the page a whole lot of texture, this is the Altenew Deck Planks 3D embossing folder. I'm going to pop this in, and basically this is a wood grain or wood planks textured embossing folder, and you can see there on the back what it would look like on plain black cardstock, but here it gives a whole lot of texture to that perfect pearls card front that we used. When it comes to die cutting flowers and things like that, there are a couple of good options. Basically, one is to start off with white cardstock, which is what I have decided to do here today. And you can color it yourself using a whole lot of different mediums depending on what you are comfortable with. You can use inks, you could use colored pencils, you could use gelatos, you could use watercolors, you can use anything that you are really comfortable with and you enjoy using. For me, this is using the Distress Oxide inks and some finger daubers. I'm putting some Mowed Lawn green ink on this first, and then I will add a little bit of texture in different color using the Rustic Wilderness ink. If you do not want to do this out of white cardstock, then the other option is to use colored cardstock, and that gives you a really good head start. You can also add ink to these to kind of give them a little bit more dimension. But it does mean that you start off with a nice coloured card base, which sometimes is just a really big helpful kind of start off rather than having to start from these white cardstocks. Then to make my flowers, I always layer them up. I give them a little bit of dimension by kind of squeezing the petals with my fingers or shaping them with a pencil or curling them around something or something like that. And then I usually add 2 or 3 of these flowers, if not 4 sometimes if I want them to be really bulky. But I put a little bit of liquid glue in to hold them together, and then you can see here I have all of my foliage, all of my flowers, and the white frame that we created. I have some of these extra skinny foam strips. These ones are from scrapbook.com, and they are very skinny. I think they're 1/8 of an inch, and there are so many of them in the packet. I feel like I'm never going to run out. I'm popping this on the back of my white frame, but you could just die cut lots of the white frames and stack them up. That would also give you some good dimension. Or you could just skip it altogether because you don't really need the dimension. It's just a little extra part of the card. Then because I cut this down into a card front, I'm going to pop this down onto my 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base, and because we used a little bit of water with the perfect pearls, they are already fixed on there nicely. I don't use any fixative or anything. I never find that they come off for me, but if they do, then using a little bit of hairspray or something like that, or even a proper fixative, is going to work just fine to secure them. I have popped my frame down there on top, and then this is a really simple case of kind of decorate as you wish. I went through my stash just to find a font in a size that was going to fit nicely within my frame. So these are the celebration words, I think, from Tim Holtz. And these, I just die cut them once, although you could die cut them out plenty of times to make them dimensional as well. But just checking that they kind of fit nicely within my little frame there. But it was really fun to kind of change up the texture of the black background. So we gave it the texture with the embossing folder, but also to change it up using the perfect pearls. We kind of didn't take away the black, but we definitely gave it a different look than all of the other black backgrounds, but we still used up those gorgeous card bases. I will admit that I'm very much one of those people who definitely reaches for the white card bases. It's what I'm used to, it's what I know best, I find it the easiest to work with, but it's been really fun to use up some of these darker card bases, and it doesn't have to be black, it can be any dark colours, really forest greens and navy blues and all of those gorgeous colours that we kind of, just sometimes I find it easier to use white, and so that's what I reach for. But this has been fun. I'm adding in a little bit of foliage along with my flowers down the bottom there, and I just snip my die cuts. You got to make your die cuts and things work for you, your stamps, and so I just snip them to however I want them to be. I cut off little pieces, I glue them together to make them bigger, whatever works, whatever I need, I'm going to try and make it work with what I have. And I decided just on a couple of smaller pieces. I originally was going to use quite a lot of greenery and foliage and things, but actually I found just this amount was plenty. So I'm going to pop a couple of white centers in there with the flower, and that is the first card all finished for today. So we used the black card bases, but we changed it up a little bit by using the perfect pearls and giving it a whole lot of texture. Now, one thing when I am doing black card bases or darker card bases, I always like to add in something in the middle to make it easy. I know that you can write with silver pens and all those sorts of things, but all of my cards just go into a big stash, and my friends and family kind of just dive into it whenever they need to give away a card and things. So I don't want to make it difficult for them when they open up the card and find they probably should have had a silver pen or something that they don't already have. So I just tend to pop the white piece of paper in the middle to make it easy for whoever is grabbing the card. Next up, we're going to move on, and these are some gorgeous die cuts. I have used these hexagons in so many videos. In fact, there is a coupon code for these, and I believe it is still valid. So I will put the coupon code down in the description box below, right by the link to these hexagons. So this set has the several different sizes of kind of outline hexagons, and then it has all of those gorgeous intricate shapes. Now, you could use any shape here at all using some white die cuts and then some colored die cuts on top of those to really cut that black background. The darker backgrounds is going to work really well. I just use my T-ruler to make sure that one or two of these are nice and straight and square onto my card base, and then I pretty much just go from there and eyeball it. As long as they look roughly straight and kind of in place, then I'm good to go. And I'm using some liquid glue to adhere these down. This is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, and then this is the Birds of the Woods stamp set. I'm actually not going to use the birds today because this one has really good sentiments in it as well, so I'm going to use it for the sentiments only. And I'm using some anti-static powder bag there, then some VersaMark sticky embossing ink, and I'm just using the little thanks. And then I have a little sub-sentiment that is going on, and I decided to give that a little bit of dimension that I would heat emboss it and pop it up a little bit. So I'm using some super fine white embossing powder to do the sentiment today, and using the super fine is the one that I usually purchase, because that way when I'm doing sentiments in tiny, and this little sentiment, the sub-sentiment here is really, really delicate and tiny script, and so it works perfectly well. It gave a really crisp, clear impression when I was stamping, and so it's important for the super fine because it can do those really fine things, but it also does all of those solid stamps and really bold stamps as well. So I always go for the super fine version of embossing powders if I can. I don't carry many embossing powders at all. I carry pretty much just the clears and white and a gold and a silver, and then that's pretty much it. I think I maybe have a copper there as well, but I don't do any colors or anything. If I want colored embossing, then I will stamp in some VersaFine clear inks, which are pigment inks, and then I emboss it with some clear embossing powder, and that way I don't have to have a whole lot of embossing powders sitting in my stash because I do have a really small craft space. I have just put tiny little dabs of glue on the back of these really intricate little die cuts here, and I didn't even end up using everything that I had cut out. Also, some that I've cut off the edge there, I could repurpose them and kind of add them on. Here I decided to use a little bit of pink that I'm going to pop in the middle, and this is one of the colors that I used on the card front as well, just so that it matches with that pink down there. But here is another really simple, quick idea for your darker card bases. Now this here is some satin cardstock. Now this looks terrible on camera, but it is actually gorgeous in real life. My lights are reflecting and finding this all sorts of hard to cope with, but I'm going to create a really gorgeous simple card that is very fun to create and really effective using some die cut inlay techniques. So these are all the kind of colors I had, and any of them would have worked. I decided to go with a kind of a bright blue and then a really sort of almost ducky blue, or I'm not sure, but it's a lighter blue, kind of a grey blue, I guess. Anyway, gorgeous colors, and mirror cardstock is going to work for this. Any foil cardstocks, you could even foil your own to do this, or you could just use normal cardstock, and some nice bright colors would look perfect as well. I am cutting out some little squares here, and these happen to be 1 3/4 inches by 1 3/4 inches, and that's just purely because that's what worked for my project. Pretty much all of the cards I make are the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch finished card size. I have the Curvy Leaves die set here by Pinkfresh Studios. You guys have seen this so many times in my videos. It is an absolute favourite of mine and such a good investment for me. I did have that flower die as well, which would have looked perfect. Any die that you have in your stash is going to work really well. Now I used some low-tech mint tape, and the reason that I popped it on here and then cut off the edges is so that I can get this in exactly the same place on all of my little squares. So I know that it goes straight in the middle, and both of those edges of the mint tape are going to line up with the outsides of the square, and that way it'll end up in the same place on every single square that I die cut. So all I'm doing is running this through my die cutting machine. I pop a little bit of the low-tech tape on the back as well, so that I hold all of those die cuts in. And then I'm going to run this through for all 4 of them, and then I'm going to do that on the dark blue satin cardstock and the light blue satin cardstock, and then you can see all of them up there. So at the moment they are just all of the pieces that I die cut are held into that little square. I don't want to lose any of them. I did slice out a square from some black cardstock, and you can see here that on the back I have that little piece of mint tape which holds everything in place, and this just means I'm not going to lose those little pieces from inside of the leaves. Now I'm going to separate all of these out because I'm going to do some inlay here. So I take this piece out, and you can see all I'm doing is carefully just removing it on that little piece of low-tech tape. So take all of these ones out, and then I'm going to mix and match these. You could do this with as many colors as you like. I chose to just use 2 colors today. Then what I'm going to do is use some of this double-sided adhesive sheets, and I'm going to cut some squares from these to be just a little bit smaller. Now this is the kind of easiest way to do die cut inlay, but you can also do this onto some regular paper, and then just make sure that you have, whether you want to use an adhesive roller or just some liquid glue, something to go down on the back so that all of your pieces are going to stick in. But I just find this the easiest way. I take off a little bit of the release paper and then pop it on the back, and then this is where I can lay in my other coloured die cut, and it should fit right in like a puzzle piece. And then I'm going to take some tweezers to get these little pieces here of the insides of the leaves, and then these are the 2 that I finish with, because this is going to create kind of 8 of the little squares. Again, you could choose which one you prefer, with the darker background or the lighter background. If you didn't want to do die cut inlay for this, then you could just die cut out that gorgeous little leaf shape and stick it right on top of your squares. So that would just be a die cut that is adhered on top. This way it's kind of like a 1 layer thing. So either is going to work just fine, but die cut inlay can be pretty fun. Then all I have to do here, because those were double-sided sheets, is just remove the other side of the release paper, and then I'm able to just kind of eyeball where to put these down. I kind of have them all sitting in place, so I can pretty much know how much of a border to leave. You can leave as much or as little of a border, and I've kind of chosen to move these, turn them around 90 degrees, like a quarter turn every single time when I go around, but you could just put them all facing in the same direction as well. And there's this gorgeous kind of metallic-y satin finish tile that is going to go right on the front of our card base. And I did decide to pop this up on some foam tape, but that's definitely not necessary. I just thought it kind of lifted it from the darker background, because we have used black as the back for the tile as well. So yes, this is going to hang off the edges, and I'm just going to cut this off cleanly. This doesn't bother me at all. I still really like the look. And then I white heat embossed a Celebrating You Today from the Sentiment Strips 2 stamp set, something really plain and simple, and it breaks that little tile, the the color from that tile with that gorgeous sentiment. I'm going to pop it up on a little bit of one of those extra skinny foam strips as well and pop it in the middle. And this is a very simple card. You could recreate this in so many different ways. If you do end up trying out any of these cards, I would love to see them, and my Facebook page is the best place that you can take some photos and you are able to kind of upload them there and share them with our group of like-minded crafters. I will leave a link to that Facebook group in the description box below this video, but it is called Come Crafting with Natasha, and we would love to see you there. Now, I have this gorgeous big die cut, and I really don't have any other dies like this one. This one is pretty big. I am taking 5 of the Simon Hurley Create die inks, so I have got just a range here. I am making sure that the colors I put next to each other, I am sort of able to blend. I will have to be a little bit careful with the kind of yellowy orangey and the, which is the guppy color, and then the Tropical Tango one, which is the kind of greeny bluish turquoisey kind of color. Those are the only two I'm going to struggle to blend a little bit. They are a little bit tricky, but aside from that, if I don't cross them over too much, you can see right there that they are going to be just really nice bright colors on a plain white die cut. And this is a very, very easy technique, a fun, fast, easy technique for darker backgrounds. It stands out beautifully and provides so much color, yet it's pretty quick to create. I squirted out a little bit of the matte medium onto a piece of scrap paper, and I'm using a makeup sponge or a makeup wedge to apply this evenly all over the back there, so nothing is going to squish out or squidge out on the sides. Pop this down onto my card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Again, I did white heat emboss that little sentiment there. That is also from the Sentiment Strips 2 stamp set. I am going to add a little piece of foam again to the center of this one. You could just kind of bulk do these sentiment strips, and they're going to work good for lots of the different cards that we have created today. But I'm going to pop that right across the middle. When I was creating this card, I was thinking of so many different ways that I could do this one, and so many different things I could use in my stash to kind of do a different spin on this one. But anyhow, I will stick with this today. This video is getting long enough as is. I will have links to everything that I can possibly find down in the description box below in case you're interested in checking that out. I will also leave links to my Facebook group if you would like to come and join us and share some of your makes and creates over there. We would love that. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me today. Which one of these is your favorite? Which one are you most likely to try and give it a go? I hope you've enjoyed these ideas for using up our darker card bases. I have had a whole lot of fun creating these, and so many more ideas are flowing from even just creating these myself. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!